The lives and legends of the Vikings are mysterious and fascinating. The Norsemen has become famous all over the world for their raiding, pagan gods as well as fearless and brutal ways in combat. The Vikings were seafaring people from Scandinavia who sailed as far as North America and the Middle East. They were traders, farmers, and warriors. The word Viking is a derivative of Vikinger, which in Old Norse language means raider or pirate. So, while we know them as Vikings, they probably never called themselves that to other societies. They were known by different names as well. For example, the Germans called them Ascomani, in Ireland they were known as Dubgail and Fingail, and Arabs and Byzantines named them Rus or Varangians. The Anglo-Saxons called them Danes. They believed in the Norse Ace of Faith. The Vikings believed in many gods, and their faith is generally known as Ace of Faith. The main gods were Odin, the Allfather, Thor, god of thunder, Loki, the god of mischief, Freya, the goddess of love and fertility, and many more. The Ace of Faith almost completely disappeared when Scandinavia became Christian. In recent years, the Old Norse faith has gained more popularity. Shield maidens. Women could also be warriors, they were known as shield maidens. Recent findings have discovered that shield maidens played a much more important role than previously thought, and they now know for sure that they existed. Women in general also had far better rights than other European women. They could divorce their men and have intercourse without being married. One of many fascinating facts about the Vikings. Valhalla was the ultimate destination. In Valhalla, endless food and drinks awaited as well as the beautiful Valkyries. Residents of Valhalla would fight all day long and get their wounds healed every evening and then celebrate all night long. The Prose Edda by Snorri Sturluson is the only remaining old source that states how one can enter Valhalla. According to him, those who died in battle were taken to Valhalla. And the ones who died of sickness or old age had to find themselves in hell. Valhalla was the hall of Odin, and only those that he deemed worthy would be allowed to stay there. Raven. According to Norse mythology, the Allfather Odin had two ravens, Hugin and Munin, who flew all over the world to inform Odin about events and all kinds of information. Odin's ravens are mentioned in the Poetic Edda as well as other stories from the Viking Age. They used the rune script for writing. There is not much written on papers from the Viking Age in rune script, but there are plenty of stones around Scandinavia that tell tales and memories of fallen Vikings and important events. The alphabet of the Old Norse rune script that the Vikings used. Their usage of runes is one of the most well-documented facts about the Vikings. Drinking horn. It would be quite barbaric to drink from a horn today, but during these times it was very convenient. Beowulf and the Poetic Edda both mentions drinking horns, and in Beowulf, it is said that mead was served in drinking horns. Viking boats. The iconic boats that made it possible to sail far away as well as being able to traverse rivers, fjords, and coastal waters gave the Vikings a huge advantage. There were generally two types of boats, merchant and war boats. However, many merchant boats could also be used for war purposes. Only a few ships have been found intact, and some of the most notable ships that you can see today are Gokstad, Oseberg, Thun and Skuldelev. The Viking boats were also an important part of the burial ceremonies. Wealthy and important Vikings were all burned in ships sailing away. Only one helmet has been found. Vikings are often depicted with helmets with horns, and even though it has been debunked as a myth, the horned Viking helmets continue to sell over the world. However, experts are not even sure that Vikings wore helmets. It is believed that only important and wealthy Vikings wore helmets. Another theory is that the helmets were passed down from father to son and that they were used until they broke down. So far, there has only been one finding of a helmet that could be fit together into one piece. Other than the Geirmundbu helmet, only fractions of helmets have been found. The Geirmundbu helmet is on display at Kulturhistorisk Museum in Oslo, Norway. The Viking Longhouse. The longest Viking longhouse ever found is the Chiefdom of Borg, which is thought to have been 83 meters long. Viking longhouses were homes to families, and the larger longhouse you had, the more wealthy family. Viking weapons. Spears and axes were the most common weapons among the Vikings. Swords were generally for the higher-ranked warriors, and many of them were named according to old sagas. Vikings were very active in the slave trade. Just like many other civilizations, slavery was commonly practiced by the Vikings. They sold slaves who were used for the hardest work in the fields. They could, according to various sources, become free by their owner or if someone bought their freedom. The slaves had no rights and were comparable to cattle. Slaves could also be used for sexual purposes. It is also described that attractive slave girls would be treated better, and skilled craftsmen would also be treated better than regular slaves. The first written Viking raid in England was recorded in 789 AD. A few years later though came another raid which has become very famous, the raid on the island of Lindisfarne, where the Vikings raided the church. The Christians who managed to survive the attack on St. Cuthbert in 793 recorded the shocking event on the Doomsday Stone. However, already in 789, the Vikings showed no mercy when the King's Reeve came to meet them. You can subscribe to our channel for the continuation our videos. Thanks for your time.